Solve Thirst first by visiting pennyappeal.org. This programme is brought to you in association with Penny Appeal.
If you want to be part of our show, it's very easy. Our telephone number is on your screen, 01924231083, or you can WhatsApp us on 07585835150. On the 16th of January, the whole world celebrated World Religion Day. The idea to celebrate World Religion Day was that we promote peace, interfaith harmony, and of course, awareness around different religions. However, a very concerning study has recently been published by Birmingham University, which has proven that the least likely people in the United Kingdom are Irish gypsies, and the second least likely are Muslims. So yes, we are still talking Islamophobia. So today we want to talk around racism, Islamophobia, and we have invited lovely Mehvish Shaffi-Ajibola, who is a HR specialist and has taken out her time to come onto our show. Mehvish, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
First of all, congratulations. You have been offered a very important post. Tell us more about it.
Well, I think what I will share is, it is an important post. We know nationally and globally, we've been talking a lot in the last few years about equality, diversity, and inclusion. And it's a big topic. It's a very emotive topic, and it's a very it's a topic that will continue to have sort of continuous conversations, if that makes sense. And I think it's not going away. And from my perspective, it has been a big part of my work in the last 2-3 years. It's combined everything I've done, and in terms of what this new role, and I'm kind of refraining from kind of going into details about the role because I'm still sort of working through the details. But ultimately, it will allow me to really have more of a system-wide approach to really embed the equality, diversity, and inclusion agenda. Racism exists. Islamophobia is part of it. Faith discrimination exists. And from an organizational point of view, having conversations about this and really kind of providing the relevant tools and equipment for staff as well as the organization to really support their workforce and the community it supports is important. And I think from my perspective, I am in a role to really make big changes, to allow a more meaningful conversation to be had, rather than talking about things on a surface level, really kind of seeing what can we do to move from talk to action. And I think from that perspective, we're now in a position after 2.5 years of really talking about racism, talking about discrimination. It's now moving to action, and I hope my new role will help with doing that at a very system level. So I'm excited. It's the beginning.
It definitely is. And you're absolutely right. The whole idea of sort of talking about this again and again is to raise awareness. Now, I will come back to that Birmingham study. It's quite intriguing because there's so many points which are part of that study. And one of them certainly highlights that when it comes to Islamophobia, it is potentially because it is accepted. When it comes to media, it is more acceptable within the political circles. And unfortunately, it is also more acceptable within the middle and upper class. And of course, that is a bit of a problem. So what would you say? What is the biggest reason? Why are we still stuck? And why is there still so much Islamophobia around us in a world where even a pet animal has rights? When it comes to people who are of colored skin and Muslims, they still have a twofold disadvantage.
Yeah, I think it's such a big question, Anita, because I think it's the same with why we're having conversations about race. It's difficult. It's controversial. It people have different opinions, and going back to the emotive element, I myself am Muslim, and it took me a really long time to really own that as part of my identity. And I'm a British Muslim, and for me, being a Muslim is what I grew up in. It's the environment I was part of, and from my perspective, it's not just it's community as a whole. We need to embrace the different elements of someone's identity, and one thing. And by doing that, it comes down to the conversations about diversity. We all are very different. We all have an identity that we resonate with. And when it comes to something that's difficult, that doesn't sit with someone else, and it's controversial, like Islamophobia, like racism, it's easier not to talk about it. And I think it's a journey we're on. And like I said, in the last 2 years, we've started talking about racism, like really talking about it and really making a step change within organizations and within the media globally. And now I really truly believe that we really need to kind of move move that conversation into faith. And I say that because of the experiences I've had, because when I engaged with Black and Asian workforce, or Black, Asian, minority, ethnic staff, and when I was really kind of speaking to them about their experiences or learning about their experiences when it came to racism and the inequalities they experienced, there was a good large group of people that actually wanted to focus on faith. They wanted to talk about being a Muslim. We know from evidence that Black people are more likely to be discriminated against, more likely to be experiencing sort of racism. There's a lot of evidence in relation to that. However, what if you're a Black person who's a Muslim? And one thing I've clearly recognized in the conversations and in the work that I've been involved in is if you're Black and you're a Muslim, that just makes it even more harder for someone to really come forward and have that sense of belonging, be part of the conversation, give their whole self to whether it's an organization or a community, because they don't feel accepted. And I think there's a lot of work that we need to do to really identify and understand intersectionality, but also how do we make people feel comfortable to be able to talk about Islamophobia, because it is part of the parcel when we talk about racism. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, that definitely does. And what do you think we could do? Because you certainly are in a very senior role now, and you've always been, and you've seen all of this. And of course, the pandemic has been a bit of an eye-opener, because I think that was the first time we actually realized that people from the BAME community, unfortunately, were losing out because of the lack of faith within the system, the lack of faith in the healthcare professionals. And different studies did sort of highlight that, unfortunately, when it comes to the national health or the healthcare systems, we have let the BAME community down. We've not really looked after them like we should have. And it was a learning curve. But when it comes to your sort of experience, what could we do to make things better for people who are faced with these challenges?
I think, again, it's different folds. I think everyone in the system needs to do better. It's not just the individuals that are, because I don't like saying that actually the people who are experiencing the discrimination, they need to do something. They do. But equally, I think it's a varied pronged approach when it comes to an individual who's experienced something, especially when it's racism, Islamophobia. Have the courage to speak up, have the courage to share your experiences, because the more we hear about it, the better it is. And you're right, from the evidential point of view, health inequalities exist. And there's a lot of work that's happening, in particular within the health service, to really work through that and really join up all the evidence to make sure that inequalities don't exist, and it's a process, and I'm really grateful that these conversations are happening. But I think from an individual's level, if they're experiencing it there and now, please don't shy away. Have the courage to come forward and share. And if you can't, you can use access points such as community centres, or your whoever you feel that you have that safe space to have that conversation. So if it's in a hospital, you've got PALS, a team. You could speak to your community health services. You can speak to maybe a practitioner or someone that you have that relationship with, or a GP. It's about just sharing, and bring along a friend to then be able to even help you to have that conversation. The more we do that as a community, the more it will be flagged up, the more it will be raised that this is an issue, because by being silent, we're not helping the situation. And equally, as healthcare professionals at different levels, and I'll move away from healthcare as well, because I think inequalities exist in the workforce, in the community, in various different settings. And ultimately, I think that as an individual, if you're experiencing discrimination, there's a responsibility to really speak up and share. Don't shy away, and have the courage to speak up. But equally, as an organization, you need to be listening to your client base, listening to your patients, listening to your residents, your local communities. Have that ear to the ground to say, actually, we're here to do better, because it's not about us, it's about the community. And how do we serve the community? The community is a diverse community, so let's have these conversations and let's do better. And I think if we do that from a collective point of view, we will start making that shift. But it's a process.
Definitely. And Mehvish, you've so rightly identified the fact that it's important that we speak up. And if you're finding it difficult, perhaps we team up with someone who can represent us, a friend, someone we trust. And it is very important that if we are seeing any form of discrimination, we also take action. If you want to be part of our show, it's very easy. Our number is on your screens. You can call us, you can WhatsApp. It's time for a break shortly, but we would like you to stay with us. The topic for today is Faith Discrimination.
Solve First by visiting pennyappeal.org. This programme is brought to you in association with Penny Appeal.
Welcome back to Let's Talk. Before we went on to our break, we were speaking to lovely Mehvish, who was giving us a lot of insight in terms of fair discrimination within different organizations. And the idea is to spread awareness, to talk about this, so that people have the courage to come forward if they are at risk of being discriminated, or if they are being bullied at work because of their race, because of their color, because of their faith. Mehvish, before we went on to the break, we were talking about how it's important to empower people, give them the courage to come forward. Sometimes it's not as simple as it seems, so it's easier said than done. And of course, when we look at your name as well, it's quite intriguing. So I wanted to ask you a very personal question as well. So your name is Mehvish Shaffi-Ajibola. Tell us more about yourself and your experience, your life experience, being British Pakistani, Muslim, and tell us more.
Okay, so any opportunity to talk about myself, I will. So yes, British Pakistani, born and bred up north and northeast, very white community. This was back in the 80s, so I'm telling my age there. And unfortunately, back then, I was the victim of, my family were a victim of racism and Islamophobia. We would have words such as, graffitied all over my dad's sort of shop, go home, I don't like using the word, but PAKI. It was very clear to the community that we were Muslims. In particular, my name was Mehvish Hussain. So my dad named me Hussain. And in terms of my experiences, we had graffiti, we were assaulted many times. We had petrol bombs thrown at us. My mum still has all the scars on her hands because the amount of times that she had to sort of manually sort of put out the fire when we were really young. So I think from a very young age, I knew I was different, or my family were different in the community. And then of course it didn't change. I came to South, so I'm in London, and as I came down South, where up north it was very direct in terms of racism and my experiences of Islamophobia, down South it was far worse. It was far worse because it was microaggressions. It was the silent actions that I would see. The breaking point for me came when I was studying in America, and the bombs happened in London. And at that point, like I said, my name was Mehvish Shaffi-Ajibola. And I remember being in the taxi on my way back to JFK airport, and the news broke of the terrorist attack, and the taxi driver, an American taxi New Yorker, started coming out with extreme racist views, became extremely violent because he was hearing the news. And the whole time I was at the back of the cab, it was more than upset. I was terrified, thinking, please don't find out I'm a Muslim, because of course I don't wear the hijab. I did at one point, but when you look at me visually, I'm not a Muslim, but you could tell by my name. I was so compelled from that experience that when I came back into the UK safely, I ended up changing my name from Mehvish to Shaffi. And Ajibola is out of marriage, so I've added that on. My reasons for sharing that is because for a very young age, or during my childhood up until my 20s, I was like, I personally think a lot of British Muslims may be experiencing what I've experienced in terms of what is my identity, and who am I? And there was a lot of that type of thought processes, thinking, opinions that I had about self. And one thing I've learned, especially in the HR, in my profession, if one doesn't know themselves, or if one is not strong in their own identity, then what does that mean for the future for that person? And I think from that perspective, I realized that for a very long time, I didn't embrace self because I felt uncomfortable embracing myself, feeling comfortable about saying that I'm a Muslim, and not feeling that I was hiding an element of myself, which is what I was doing. And I think by doing that, I was restricting my abilities and self. And I think from that perspective, when the racism conversations happened, when George Floyd was murdered, at that point, I had to take a stand, not just for my Black colleagues who've experienced what they've experienced, but equally own the fact that I am a Muslim, own the fact that I'm a Pakistani, own the fact of my experiences, and actually saying, this is who I am and I'm going to embrace it. And by doing that, I was able to shift within myself to say, actually, I'm going to call it out because this is who I am. And I think my learning in that, and the power in just being honest and open with self, you're able to talk with, or you're able to move through the world, through life, in a very comfortable way, in a very in a very comfortable way. And I just think when I look at mental health in particular, mental health is very, very prone to people from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background. And part of me is thinking, if all of these elements are restricting our community, we need to have the courage to own our identity. And I think that's why, from my perspective, I really do encourage everyone, the young, the people my age, even the older generation, to really not think about your past experiences, but think about where you are now. And we're at a position where we all have a responsibility to call it out and not be fearful. And if you are fearful, bring a friend. Establish your support system to enable you to come forward and be yourself. So yes.
Excellent, Mehvish. And thank you so much for sharing such personal details, because, many of us may have been part of this, but it takes a lot of courage to actually come on television and talk about it openly, because these are very embarrassing episodes in one's life. And, hats down to you. Thank you so much for sharing this, because I think it may have encouraged and given a lot of, courage and empowered other people in similar positions. Now, Mehvish, you and I, we're both brown, we're both Muslims. What is our role within the community to empower people who are like us?
I think equally, I consider myself someone who has an element or have a voice. I have experiences that are similar to many others. And if I have the platform to share, then I will share, with the hope that actually, even if one person is able to have the courage to take that one step forward and explain and really voice that experience that they're having, then actually that's a step in the right direction. I think my ask is that more people do that, and especially you are in a position, I wouldn't say seniority, but more influence. If you are an imam in the community, you have a responsibility. If you are a recognized, credible individual in the community that's well respected, then you have a responsibility. It's like all of us have a responsibility to be able to influence and really kind of share, and equally be authentic in that sharing. It's not just surface level conversations to say, yes, speak up and share, whereas the person hearing it, if they don't know who you are, they may not understand that actually you understand the impact of sharing. So I think my ask is that, anyone who is in a position of influence, you need to come forward and be the voice of others, but equally empower others to be able to come forward as well to share. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. And I think that's aligned to our Islamic values. We're not on this earth for ourselves. We're doing this for a greater good. And therefore, if you are in a position, then we need to live by our values and do something about it rather than being quiet. So that's how I move through the world, and it's how I would expect other people of influence to live, to be honest. My expectations, sorry.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what we need to do. Mehvish, we are left with 3 minutes, our last 3 minutes, but I certainly want you to give us a message, especially people who were in a similar position as you. There are many teenagers out there, many people of color, who are still unable to place themselves in society, unable to know where they are from, a bit lost in terms of their roots and their identity. What sort of message do you have for them?
So I think it's twofold. I think ultimately, if you're in the community and go on the journey of self, but equally go on the journey and find people who are aligned to you. There are people out there. Go, find them. They're everywhere. We have the ability to have the intranet available. Find people that are your allies. In a workplace, I'm a HR professional, so everything I do is from an organizational point of view. And, racism, Islamophobia does exist in organizations, and it'll be wrong for us not to say that. It was something that I recently tweeted from the Grey Area Decoding, in which Hira Ali, in collaboration with the Muslim Doctors Association, pulled together a really clear 12-step action plan on what organizations can do to really address discrimination. And for me, it that clearly steps out, like highlights the steps an organization can take. And my ask is as well for individuals who are employees, familiarize yourself with that, because there's certain things that as individuals we can do as well. The talks about having faith networks, talks about, embracing and celebrating diversity, having just mutual spaces to talk about these issues, because by doing that, we can create these safe spaces. From my perspective, like I said, I'm a HR professional. I truly, truly believe that we as HR professionals have a responsibility to take such claims seriously in a workplace. So one thing that I'm behind a movement called hashtag inclusive HR, and it really focuses on having more inclusive HR professionals and having them at a very senior level to really drive the need to come to fairer outcomes, to come to a more diverse thinking and an approach, which is what is needed within a workplace. And I think there's a lot that's happening, and I think go out and find that information or find allies who will be able to point in the right direction.
Mehvish, thank you so much. We are towards the end of our show. Thank you so much for being part of it. Viewers, we'll catch you again next week. Allah Hafiz.